Hello, I am your host, Kathy Chester, and welcome to the Move It or Lose It podcast, a podcast about all things that move the mind, body, and soul. The Move It or Lose It podcast is for information, awareness, and inspirational purposes only. I am not a doctor, and I don't even play one on TV, so please consult your doctor before making any medical decisions. The views expressed by advertisers, guests, or contributors are their opinions and not necessarily the views of the Move It or Lose It podcast. Hello, welcome to another edition of Move It or Lose It. And today we are back with Dr. Sam, and we're going to continue our discussion about TikTok and multiple sclerosis and how social media has taken such a big part in the role of getting patients information. And so, Dr. Sam, we're so happy to have you on again and just discussing what it's like to have multiple sclerosis and be a doctor and having such a presence in what I believe will not ever end in social media and the work that you're doing. So thank you for coming back and joining us again.
Thank you. Very happy to be here.
It's we talked last time, so I encourage you, if you'd missed the first one, go back and listen to that. And I think you'll find it very interesting, Dr. Sam's story and how she got into neurology, and just go back and listen to her diagnosis and where we started. So going back to that a little bit, you coming onto TikTok and both of us talking about something that wasn't like, woohoo, TikTok, let's go. But wanting to really get both of our messages out and our voice out and talking to the community and helping. It seemed like, wow, this changed. This isn't about, a bunch of people dancing and a bunch of kids on TikTok. There's, of course, a spot for that, but there's a spot for a lot of, for an ability to communicate and being able to spread awareness. And so, have you been shocked by the excitement about your presence and how many have really been able to really receive you and really have gotten so much from your videos?
Yeah. I was honestly shocked at how excited people were to see me, which was very pleasant, like a pleasant surprise. But I was just like, wow. I mean, it really highlighted the need, I think, for that kind of presence and information. But yeah, so I just kind of started these videos, and I made my platform on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook.
Okay, yeah.
Personally, I was more familiar with Instagram and Facebook Reels, and
right.
I don't know if that's just my age demographic or what, but I had never been on
Me
TikTok.
too.
I had made an account once when someone sent me a link and just to see the video.
Right.
And I also thought it was mostly people making silly videos. But
animal videos, dancing.
Right. But I did notice people who had a following on Facebook and Instagram, when you actually, if it was like a repost from TikTok and you go to TikTok, they had way more followers on TikTok.
Right.
I also didn't realize that what I was trying to do is kind of more suited for that platform, just the small informational videos, getting out to a wide audience that you don't know. Because I think Facebook and Instagram, I mean, now they're owned by the same company, but they're, they're really targeting the people you already are connected with, like your network.
Right.
So, I didn't really think about that going in. It makes sense now.
Yeah.
I've seen the response because I have the same videos on all three platforms, and 100 people are following me on Facebook, and there's 6,000 now on TikTok.
Yes.
It's pretty amazing. I just started a few months ago. So I think initially I really want to keep the momentum up. When I started posting, I think I posted a few because I was terrified to start recording myself. And I'm sure everyone gets over the not liking the way you sound or look on video.
Oh yeah.
Anyways, I had this stroke of inspiration. I'm I'm going to do it. So I recorded my first video or two, and then I was really busy and I didn't post anything. And then I was like, all right, I got to get back into it and try to do it one a day. And that's when things started really taking off, up until I took about a month and a half off for my wedding honeymoon, and obviously I wasn't posting.
You really shouldn't have done that.
I know.
Just
so now I'm back in it, and I see that there's engagement again and things.
Right.
The people are following me, and I think initially, in fact, I was getting a lot of messages from people in the MS community on TikTok, oh, you're the talk of the town right now. I was like, this is kind of cute.
That's funny.
And I really want to.
But you really are. As soon as I went on there, they were like, you got to connect with Dr. Sam. You say a lot of the same
Yeah.
stuff. I'm like, I will, but people were
Yeah.
telling me
Yeah.
about a million different things.
Yeah.
So I was so excited to find you finally.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I love, they're like, you got to interview her on your podcast. I'm like, I will, I promise.
Yeah.
So it was so great to connect with you. And I was just blown away by all the stuff. I was like, gosh, you just have such a way of presenting your information, and in a way, like you said before, that is easy for us to be able to process. And it's not, and I love the way that you do it, because so many times a doctor will get on and speak in words that we're like, can you come again? What was that? And how do you say that in English? And so it's difficult for sometimes we'll watch something and I'm just like, I have no idea what he said at all. I have no clue. And I need some kind of a doctor's, like, for dummies, so that I can understand what in the world that means. So it is very refreshing. And I think that's why YouTube and TikTok is so helpful, because you coming on to explain things in terms that we understand, since we all did not go to school and we're not neurologists,
Right.
so that we can understand some of the terms that make sense to us.
Yeah.
And so we really do appreciate that. Um, how has it become with your fellows, with your other people in your team and stuff like that? What do they think about you on TikTok? Do they watch your videos?
Oh yeah, they're very supportive. I initially only told like my co-fellows, and then more recently I've told more people in the clinic. And I think especially for people who are like the research coordinators, since we do
Yeah,
have so many research projects, a lot of them are between like college and trying to go to like med school or PA school or nursing school, whatever. And I think that's also like educational for them too, because they're seeing
yeah.
MS patients every day, and then getting some of that, background knowledge is helpful too. So, but people have been overall very supportive.
Have you spurred anybody on to maybe do their own?
I don't think so. It's funny because I think a lot of neurologists are introverts, like
Oh yeah.
significant introverts. And well, it was just a kind of funny aside, but was telling my team that I thought I was introverted. And but they were like, "Are you kidding? You're like the most extroverted one of all of us." But it's because my husband is like the most extroverted person you will ever meet. We did like
That's
personality
funny.
tests, and he's like 99% extrovert, and I'm like 60th. So I was like, okay, compared to him, I do feel like I need to recharge sometimes. But compared to the people I work with, like they're like,
Yeah.
you're definitely like so
Yeah.
that-
That's funny.
yeah, so they're like, yeah, they have no interest in putting themselves
Right.
on TikTok, but they're more than happy to support me. So
Right. I mean, even interviewing you as a neurologist, I'm like, you are very, very extroverted for a neurologist that I've ever had on here. Usually I'm nerved up. I'm carrying the conversation. I'm like, okay, so, and they're speaking words and I'm like,
yeah.
look this word up. I don't know what it means. So it's very funny. So yeah, I could see that they would think that of you. Very funny. So, if you could see yourself like in, like, I'd hate to say like 5 years, and that's a lot, but where do you see your practice and where do you see yourself going and moving into?
That's a very good and hard question, because
I know.
I'm trying to answer it for myself right now because I'm looking for jobs. So, because I will be finishing my training next summer, so I'm looking for jobs. And I think it's always kind of been a dream of mine, like long-term career goals, to go somewhere where there's need and help set up an MS center or
Mhm.
help expand MS care. And so, I'm kind of looking broadly for, positions and things like that. And I think it's a need across the country. Like there's,
Yeah.
I mean, definitely where I'm training this kind of saturated with MS. There's a lot of MS neurologists. And that being said, we still have waits that are 6+ months because there's so many
Yeah.
people, right? Just there's need everywhere. And so I think I'm just trying to go somewhere where I can like make a difference and
Yeah.
hopefully have enough time to continue this kind of online patient education
Right.
as well.
Like, are you thinking sometimes like out of country?
No, no, I honestly, well, I don't, the medical system is going to be very different. And I don't even know how that works in terms of going elsewhere, but I've never imagined going out of the country.
Yeah.
There's a lot of need in this country, in
Yeah.
like the South, the Midwest. I mean,
Yeah.
just less populated areas.
Oh gosh.
So
Yeah.
And I think that this is a great way online. TikTok and other online platforms are a great way to reach people in those kind of places, especially if they
Yeah.
see an MS neurologist. Because again, there's like not that many of us, and it's a really
Right.
small. I mean, the supply and demand is crazy, and so a lot of people are seeing general neurologists who
Yeah,
aren't as familiar with the newer meds, and
for sure.
it's hard to keep up with all this stuff when you're practicing. And like, I mean, I think it was when I graduated medical school, they were like, well, by the time you're 4 years out of medical school, like a third of what you've learned is totally irrelevant and completely like we've learned something else. And so
Yeah.
it's just crazy to think about.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. It is. It is. And I think that it's hard as a patient because you see your neurologist and often you guys get the blame because we're mad, because it's like, what is going on and why is there not an answer? And how in 15 minutes am I supposed to know what is my next choice and what's going on with me?
yeah,
And, we come with what we're told to come with, our list of questions. And, you're supposed to answer them in 15 minutes and we're supposed to leave feeling better. And you're supposed to be, our God to us.
yeah.
So we leave pissed off.
Hmm.
And I'm sure you leave like, I know that patient's mad and I don't know what to do. And you're frustrated, we're frustrated. And then we leave thinking that this whole thing is just crap. And we leave depressed, feeling like maybe medicine in general just isn't where I should go. Maybe I just get off it. And I know a lot of patients now, it's terrifying, but so many are getting off their DMTs because of that frustration. And, it's like, you don't, it's hard to say because I
Yeah.
get this opportunity to interview doctors and patients.
Hmm.
And so it's tough because it's like, I know that, there's only this little bit of time that doctors get. So,
Yeah.
and I know patients are jumping off DMTs and stuff, and that's terrifying. So it's just a weird time. And so we're so grateful for having the time that doctors are able to give
Yeah.
to social media, because I think it helps when we hear things like, there's a lot of frustration, but don't, jump off a DMT. Don't jump off your medications
Right.
because you're frustrated,
Right.
because
Yeah.
you have to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
And I think when we can hear those things, even in those frustrating times, even when we feel like we're not being listened to and we're not, and as you said, when we get depressed and anxiety's here. And so it's like, you know what, forget it. I'm just getting off it.
Yeah.
Um, I think that those times are good. Do you find a lot of, when you talk about that, do you find a lot of responses on TikTok that that's a big,
I haven't really gotten into that so much. I've been more doing education about, well, it seems like a lot of people have been really interested in the MRI, like imaging. And so I have
yeah,
a lot of questions about that. And I realize like a lot of my videos now have focused on that. And so I'm trying to kind of swing back towards like symptom management. Um, I think that's those topics are really hard to get into on a TikTok video.
yeah,
I think that has to be kind of a back and forth conversation
right,
because I think it can be taken the wrong way by
yeah,
and it's just the nature of having a video where you can't have like a
sure,
two-way conversation. But I mean, yeah, it's tough. And I really sympathize because I've been on both sides. Like I
sure,
have been the person calling for an appointment and they're like, I'll call you back. And then you never get a call back. Or
yeah,
like, when my insurance changed and then I get charged for like the whole
right,
amount because they didn't charge the insurance and then I have to wait on hold for hours and then they don't fix it. And it's like, I'm connected to the healthcare system and I can't even
right,
imagine how hard it is for somebody who doesn't understand the medical system or like has cognitive issues,
right,
and so like I'm super sympathetic. And then but at the same time I'm like, if I could just do medicine the way I wanted to do it, and I'm
right.
sure a lot of doctors feel this way,
Oh yeah,
patients and doctors would be so much happier. But like we're
right,
told
right,
you only have this much time to see the patient. You're like, well, I actually
yeah,
have 2 hours with this patient, but insurance will never pay for that. And so
right,
it's like you're just kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. Like
yeah,
I actually, as a fellow, it's nice because I can spend as much time as I want
right,
with people. And when I'm working with another doctor in clinic and we're like running behind, like they're gonna go see somebody else while I'm spending the time with the person who
yeah,
needs that time. And I think that is a perk of going to like a teaching academic center
exactly.
for sure. But out in the real world, like a private practice that's like,
Exactly.
and so interestingly, I know this is like a little bit off topic, but like there are some people who like, this is well known in the psychiatry world, but some people who do kind of fee for service, which is not taking insurance at all for their visits. And in that way, even though it sounds kind of crazy, like, oh my God, how could you not take insurance? Like they can spend 2 hours with you then, right?
Yeah.
Because and so it's, but then it's a whole ethical issue, because like then you're only catering to the people who can afford to do that. And
Right.
it's just such a complicated and
Yeah.
messed
Oh
up
my
system.
gosh.
It's like
Yeah.
we could talk for hours
Right.
about that, but
And
I
people
mean,
don't understand that,
yeah,
but it is, I mean, it is very appreciated. And I think we get so frustrated with it. And I know we don't want to get into this big thing with that. So, but even though we said we weren't
yeah,
going
I know.
here, but I think that there has to be, as frustrated as we get, I think there has to be a thank you for the doctors that do that. And I'm always so grateful when I see an extended visit, when I'm overwhelmed about something and my doctor has put in for an extended visit, because I realize that's going to put him behind. I realize what that means.
Yeah,
And so I think a lot more of us have to see that.
yeah,
And whenever I see that, I always make sure to thank him for that, because I know that what that means.
yeah.
And I appreciate that extra bit of care,
Yeah.
that went into that.
Yeah, and I think, if you have a good doctor and you really trust them, and like that's the most important thing. And what I think I'm hearing from people on TikTok, and sometimes when things I'm saying are taken in a way I don't intend, it's because they have doctors who I don't think they don't trust, or they don't feel
Yeah.
they're listening to them, or they don't have a good bedside manner, or they have an ego. Like, I mean, I
Yeah.
have met people who have big egos. Like,
Yeah.
honestly, medicine's a humbling experience, because you constantly learning things, you're constantly making mistakes, and like, oh, I should have done this differently. And if you don't, some people aren't as open to that as others. And so,
Right.
I do think, like, obviously the personalities of doctors, just like personalities of everyone, can
Yes.
be very wide, and so you just have to find someone that you jive with, that you feel like is
Right.
listening to you. And so yeah, I think a lot of frustration also comes from people who don't feel like their doctors are listening to them, and whether
Yeah,
that's a doctor, like an issue with that person, or an issue with the system
for
within which
sure.
they're forced to work. I think it's hard to say, but I do
Yeah.
hear that frustration a lot.
For sure. Absolutely. So give me like one of your favorite stories that, as far like thus far, of like a patient that, like one or two stories, your very favorite, of like something that was just really touched your heart with a patient.
I mean, I think there are so many, and I will say, like, for my training, the only patients that I really got to follow longitudinally were ones that I took care of as a resident, because
Mhm.
the way my clinic is scheduled now, I'm with different people every month, and so kind of a lot of patients are new to me,
Right.
even though they've been followed by whoever I'm working with for years sometimes. And I think in that kind of, I'm going to separate those two. So in my
Yeah.
current position, I think the things that are most heartwarming to me are working, like, so a lot of these clinics, people have been seeing these doctors for, a decade or more.
Sure.
Like last week, for example, I mean, every single person was just, I mean, even if they had a little bit of disability, they were stable. Things were going well. And I think that that's really heartwarming to see, that that is a possibility. You can have an entire day of clinic with people who are stable on their regimens. And that would not have been the case 10, 20 years ago.
Right.
Even people who are, like, for example, I saw a patient who had primary progressive MS, and she was stabilized on Ocrevus. And that, I mean, that's amazing. That would have
Yeah.
been unheard of 10 years ago.
Right. Right.
And so I think that kind of thing, like seeing that and realizing it and being grateful for just where we are right now with medicine,
Yeah.
even though we have a lot of work to do, especially with
Yeah.
progressive MS, like we have a long ways to go, but like seeing how far we've come is just really, that's very heartwarming.
Yeah.
But then, like, back in residency, like my very first MS patient, like she'll always have a near and dear place in my heart. When I mean, I diagnosed her in the hospital for a relapse, and she was my
Uh,
age, and I really just like connected with her, and I was like, yes, I want to take you into my clinic, and I want to be your doctor. And it was a huge learning experience, because through that I learned all of the headaches that it is to get medications approved. And
Right.
all of I mean, there's so much red tape. And I almost at some points felt I was doing her a disservice by being her doctor because I didn't know how to play the game the
Right.
insurance wanted. I didn't know how to word things to get it approved. Right. And so
Yeah.
I was kind of, I remember just felt feeling so guilty because the first medication we had gone on, she changed her insurance so she could see me because the insurance wasn't taken at the clinic. And then the new insurance denied the medication we had started. And she'd already been on it and she was doing well. And I went through all the appeals and then I talked to the doctor and I did all the things I was supposed to do. And they still said, nope,
Right.
sorry, we're not paying for it. And that was just heartbreaking for me to learn. And then, learning you can partner with the drug company,
Right.
like get free drug through those programs. And like, that's what we did. And so I think along the way, just different things that would come up, I would learn along with her how to kind of be a best doctor. For example, pregnancy planning. Like,
Sure.
like, what should we do? And I was like, I don't know. Let's figure it out together. I haven't dealt with this yet. And so,
Right.
I think that, and then when I finished my residency, I kind of transitioned her to the MS clinic instead of giving her to like brand new resident who didn't
Right.
know. So,
Yeah. Right.
but I think, and I had, we had mentioned earlier when we were chatting, I had disclosed that to her, just kind of, I was earlier on in my diagnosis as well, but I disclosed to her,
Sure.
hey, I also been diagnosed, like, well, like we're all very different, but like, it'll be okay. Like there are plenty of people living with MS and living their lives and taking care of their families and working, and we're going to figure it out together. And
Yeah.
I think that was comforting to her, but at the same time, then it kind of did change the dynamic a little bit. Whereas then she would like ask me how I was doing at visits, and I was like,
Right.
I don't know if I really need to disclose this to all my patients, maybe
Right.
a select few that I really think need to hear it. But
Right.
so, but I think I mean, that's kind of the closest MS to
Right.
my heart.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
that's great. That's awesome because I mean, you're right. That is how we learn, right? I mean, it's trial and error. It's like, how else would you have learned to not disclose so much about you
Right.
that it's not like,
Right.
okay, every patient isn't supposed to be my best friend.
Right.
So I'm not supposed to
Exactly.
share all of this because it's hard because
Yeah.
it's like you want to empathize, you got this, and it
Mhm.
was your first patient. But I love that story. That's beautiful. So before I lose you, before we're done with our second, what would you say if you wanted to leave a message with our listeners, what would be that message? I know it's a big one. I
There's
was
so many
like,
messages.
I have it written down if you want me to.
I don't even remember everything I typed out to you.
It
But
was a lot.
I
You,
know.
you
I
typed a
mean,
lot.
I think the first that I already touched on is that this disease is, the management anyway, so different than it was a decade ago, and
Yeah.
certainly 2 decades ago, to the point that people who are newly diagnosed today, a lot of them, I don't think will ever reach levels of disability that, we see for people that were diagnosed 20 or 30 years ago. And so I
Mm.
think that's a really important message to drive home because I know, and it's hard because doing these videos, it's kind of like there's kind of two different camps, right? The newly diagnosed and then the people who are living with symptoms and the day-to-day. And so anyway, I don't want the seeing some of the disability to scare those people who are newly diagnosed into saying,
Right.
what, I don't even want to think about this, and then not come in and get treatment, because I think that's
Right.
like, that is the worst and most heartbreaking thing to see, when someone is in denial, they don't get on treatment, and then their disease does continue to evolve, and you see them 5-10 years later and
Right.
disabled in some way, and you're like, well, we could have potentially prevented this. That to me is like the saddest thing. And so
Yes.
the biggest message is get on treatment early. Know that everyone's different. Like, just because your friend can control their diet, control their MS with their diet or whatever, like maybe they would have been fine regardless. Like, you're your own person, and kind of just
Yes.
find a neurologist that you trust and that you can partner with. I think like those are all
Yeah.
my main messages.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And I think I love that. And I do believe, even having it 20 something years, and I know you talked about this, and I obviously love this because my podcast is Move It or Lose It. Um, had I done what my grandfather and my aunt did like years ago, I don't think I would be in relapsing remitting still if I wouldn't have exercised from day one and been on a different diet and just changed my life. And even though exercise was always a part of it, it changed from something I just loved to something I did for my life,
Right.
to really save my life. And I believe that it really did. And so I believe that all those years of that really has paid off, and I'm able to do the things I can do and help others because of that. So, and I know you agree with that. And I know you have a really beautiful thing about exercise on TikTok. So if you want to go back and follow Dr. Sam on TikTok, go ahead and give us your handle on TikTok.
Oh, it's at that MS doc. So
Yeah. So if you want to,
THAMSDOC.
yeah. So go and I'll have that also on the bottom of the show notes. So if you're driving, please don't pull over. Don't put up the brakes on. It'll be on the bottom of the show notes, and you can get all of the things, all of her social media. And also, like you said, you're on Instagram as well. And
Yep.
so we'll have your handle on Instagram
Mhm.
and TikTok. So I love having you here. I'm so excited. I know that's going to be exciting. I don't even know that I want to share this until right before that you're going to be on. So I really want to
Okay.
excite all of our TikTok people and everybody that you're going to be on here. So, Dr. Sam, I've loved having you on. I can think of a million things I want to collaborate with you. So, I hope that everybody has enjoyed this. I want to hear feedback, and I can't wait to hear how much you guys enjoyed this. So, again, Dr. Sam, thank you so much for being on. I know that people are going to love you even more, and I have just grown to love you even more than I have in just the last couple of weeks getting to know you.
Oh, thank
So,
you.
thank you for what you're doing for us and for multiple sclerosis and for you, your own body. And I look forward to seeing all that you're going to accomplish. I have no doubt. So thank you again. And again, another episode of Move It or Lose It. And we can't wait to see you back. We will see you again in just another week. So have a great time, guys. Enjoy, be safe, and don't forget to move your body. And I will see you soon. Bye, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining us today on Move It or Lose It podcast, where you can again find us every Tuesday, and also wherever you like your podcast, whether it's Apple, Spotify, Stitcher. Join us on that. And we can't wait to see you again. We're going to have a lot of exciting guests and working together. And as always, you'll hear us say at the end of every podcast, we are stronger together. So let's do it. Let's become stronger together. Have a great day.